Today's gospel, feeding of the 5,000. How many people have ever heard of this story before? Yes, it's a very common story. And what's interesting is that this is one of the stories that's in all four gospels. And Jesus' birth's only in two of them. So obviously this is important because it shows up in all four gospels. But we're reading today the Matthean version of it, the version that comes from the book of Matthew. And what we know about the book of Matthew is that it is the first one in the New Testament. And so even though Mark was written first, Matthew is that bridge from the Old Testament to the New Testament because it connects more to the Old Testament. So there are several things in this Matthean version of feeding of the 5,000 that connect it to the Old Testament. And one of them in particular is that they put Jesus up with Moses. That Moses was the Old Testament, Jesus was the New Testament. So these are some characteristics that both of them have in common, both the stories. Moses takes the people from Pharaoh and gives them freedom. And Jesus takes the people from sin and gives them freedom from sin. In this particular happening, the feeding of the 5,000, one of the things that Jesus does is it says Jesus went out into the boat to be by himself, and the people followed on foot. Now, this is used in the Old Testament, and the first time it pops up in the Old Testament is in the story when the Israelites are fleeing through the Red Sea from the Egyptians, and they get on the other side, the Red Sea closes, and the people leave on foot. So it's not a common occurrence, and those people that would have known their Hebrew readings would have known that this on foot matched. Another thing that it has is at the end of the story of Exodus, there were 600,000 men and women and children. And in this one, it tells us there were 5,000 men and women and children. So it's another form of writing that is not throughout everything. These are two direct places that are put there intentionally to mirror one another. Both of these, Jesus is on the mountaintop, feeding of the 5,000. And we have Moses on the mountaintop. Moses goes up to the mountaintop and he gets the 10 Commandments, which are what they're supposed to follow in the Old Testament. Jesus goes up, Sermon on the Mount, and gets the 2 Commandments: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. So we have two mountaintop experiences. And then we start this reading with Jesus getting in a boat and Jesus going to a secluded place. And we know that Moses did this quite frequently, that he would go away and go to a secluded place. So getting in a boat and going to a secluded place, taking care of ourselves and taking time away because it nourishes us. And here in the summer, that's when most people take vacations, and it's an important thing to do. But I'll be honest with you, there was a time when, those of you that don't know, we lived in Houston for a while, back in the 80s, and then we moved to North Carolina. And when we moved to North Carolina, it was important to me to find a church, and I'll admit it. I was doing consumer church shopping, which when I hear people today doing consumer church shopping, I'm going, ay, 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 but that's exactly what I did. I had a list of things I wanted a church to do, and I called around, and the first church I called, the phone picked up, and it said, hello, this is Grace Lutheran Church. We have pipes that have burst. We will be closed all week. If this is an emergency, call this number. And so in my consumerism, I said, well, apparently they don't want my business, and hung up the phone and found another church to call. So I called the next one, and the phone answered, and it said, good morning, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. And I said, I am looking for a church, and this is what I need. I have a daughter that's in high school, and I want to make sure they have a good youth program. I have another daughter that's getting ready to start confirmation, so I need to know that you do confirmation in the 7th and 8th grade. Not that I had particulars or anything. I have two sons that need First Communion, and they're going to be in the 3rd and 4th grade, so I'm hoping you do First Communion sometime around there. And my husband and I are both Stephen ministers, so it's important to me that you have that. So can you fill all of those? And there was this long silence. And she said, yes, ma'am, I believe we can. I said, okay, what time is your worship service? She told me. So we were there. We showed up because when I moved to a new place, and we moved quite a bit when Danny and I were first married, there were 3 things I tried to find that very first week. One of them was a library because I wanted a place my kids could go that weren't going to cost us anything and they could have something to do. Number 2 that I tried to find was the best schools in the area so we could look for houses around there so I could get my kids in the best schools. And the 3rd one was a church, so we would have some kind of community that way. So got all of those done, showed up for church on Sunday morning, and the associate pastor preached. And I was told that the pastor was on vacation and that he was a really good preacher and that we really need to come back next week to hear him. So I said, okay, the associate pastor was okay. So we went home, we came back the next week, and this retired pastor came and got in the pulpit. And the retired pastor his sermon was really good, but I wanted this head pastor because I had been told this head pastor was really, really good. So they gave us a little thing to fill out for the new visitors and everything, so I filled it out, and on it I wrote, I understand that there's a good head pastor here, but I would never know that because I've been here 2 weeks in a row, which is half a month, and he hasn't even bothered coming into church. Yes, I was brazen enough to do that. So on Tuesday morning, my phone rings, and I say hello, and he goes, hi, this is Pastor David Sloop. I am that pastor, that elusive pastor that's always gone, and I wanted to know if I could schedule a meeting with you. Well, it turns out that this pastor is the one that is responsible for Danny getting really involved in the church. This pastor's youngest daughter and his oldest daughter and our youngest daughter became best friends, and they played softball and baseball together and went high school and college and are still great friends. His son and our oldest son have been in weddings together, are still in contact all the time. Our life changed at that moment, but I can tell you I was pissed that that pastor was gone. Because my need wasn't being met when I wanted it met by that pastor in that church. Because to be honest with you, I was scared. I had just moved across country and I needed some kind of semblance. But at that point in time in my faith journey, I was looking for a church that was going to take care of me and serve me instead of looking for a church where I could serve God. I was looking for a church that could serve me instead of looking for a church where I could serve God. So what I have found now that I'm in the reversed roles is that if I don't take that quiet time and go away, you're not going to get the kind of pastor that I want to be, because you're going to get that kind of pastor that's running through, checking off boxes and doing what has to be done, but you're not getting someone that's energized and coming back. So as council this year, we had a retreat in June, and those beleaguered council members showed up. But they were tired. And they put in all they had, 6 hours in one day. But they were tired. So what as a council we did is we said, we're not going to meet in July. We're not going to meet in June. We're not going to meet in July. We'll come back together in August. What the praise team said is, we're not going to meet in June. We're not going to meet in July. We're going to come back in August. It was an intentional thing to take downtime, to refresh, and to come back so we could serve God instead of just checking boxes and having the church serve us. So I was at a conference about 10 years ago, and someone shared this book with me, and I would like to share it with you. It's called Jesus' Day Off. It is written by an author, Nicholas Allen, and it is out of England. So look at the overheads. This is Jesus. And these are his friends: Bartholomew, Andrew, Philip, Simon, Judas, Matthew, Peter, Thomas, Judas Iscariot, John, James, and James. He had 12 of them. Jesus could do amazing miracles, and no one could work out how they were done. He also told marvelous stories, all for free. And the crowd's going, "Wonderful, encore!" And a dad turning to his family, "I told you he was good." Each day, Jesus worked hard to make everything around him beautiful. Until one day he woke up exhausted from saving the world. That day, the miracles didn't go quite so well. And Jesus is going, "Then he saith," or was it "she saith?" Nor did the stories. The next morning, Jesus went to the doctor, and after examining him, the doctor advised, "Take the day off, Jesus. Relax. Enjoy yourself. Sit in the sun." So Jesus told his friends what the doctor had ordered and then went out for a walk. It was a lovely, cloudless day. First of all, he did cartwheels right across the desert. Yippee! Then he played catch with his halo. And then he had a picnic. And you might notice on the picnic he had 5 loaves and 2 fish. And after that, he had a refreshing swim. And finally, he went on a long donkey ride, something he always enjoyed. Yeehaw! It had been a wonderful day, but towards the end, as he sat in the sun, Jesus suddenly felt sad, for really, the day had been wasted, and he'd helped no one. In fact, he felt so bad, he decided to tell his dad about it. Jesus loved his dad very much. Dad knew everything and always had the right thing to say. And when Jesus told him about his day off, his dad said, "Look down there a minute, son." So Jesus looked down. Where you did your cartwheels, fountains of water appeared in the desert. And where you threw your halo and ate your picnic, the trees bloomed with fruit. And when you went swimming, the fishermen had lots of luck. And whoever you passed on your donkey felt instantly happy. So you see, when you're feeling better yourself, you can only make others feel better too. And Jesus knew that. As usual, his father was right. "Thanks, Dad," he said. And when Jesus got home, his friends were so happy to see him looking so well, they cooked him a delicious supper. And that night, after he said his prayers, Jesus slept soundly. And the next morning, he was glad he'd taken a rest. He had this funny feeling that there was a lot more good work to be done. The end. So all of us need to take time off. Now, this is not to say next Sunday when we come in, nobody is here. But that is to say that the whole purpose of Sabbath is for you to take time to get close to God. And that sometimes on our Sundays, they are so jam-packed with everything but Jesus, it is no wonder that we get exhausted and that we get tired. So that's all I'm saying, is find a day of the week that you can take some time. It'd be great if it was Sunday. And spend some extra time with Jesus, not just in church. But take the time that you need to do you, because nobody else can be you. You are the one and only individual that God made perfect and precious, just who you are. And know that. And when you find yourself grumping at the people you know and love the most, and when you find yourself short, and when you find yourself in a consumer place instead of in a place of serving, it might be just time for you to take that day off and go talk to your Father, because he always has good information to give you. Jesus just told you that in the book. Or go to the library and find a children's book and sit down and read it, because that will change you automatically. So I leave you with that, my brothers and sisters in Christ. Take some time to yourself and hang out with God for a while. And all God's people say, amen.